work on a build that's just so epic, and I gotta admit, so daunting, that you aren't entirely sure how the whole thing is gonna turn out. Now, to be on the other end of this project, and to be looking at something just so incredible is amazing. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I want to start by saying that this is the third entry in a series of videos that we've been doing on the Intel Core i9-14900KS. We kicked things off with that launch stream, where we built both an AI-cooled and custom liquid-cooled PC to show that if you wanted to keep things simple, or you wanted to crank things all the way up as a PC enthusiast, you absolutely can with the CPU. Then we followed that with like a detailed Dragon AIO build, this exact build that was all set in an AIO to show a deep dive into what it takes to tame the beast, along with some detailed benchmarks. So what's different about this one then? Well, this one we wanted to go to that highest tier of cooling. We wanted to join the pantheon of PC Elite and really ensure that we had everything we needed to really get the most out of the 14900KS. So we partnered with EKWB to direct die water cool and see just how much better the cooling is and what kind of room we had to work with on the 14900KS after we cooled it. So that means delidding, adding water cooling, and then making sure it all worked. Now, what you're about to see when we get to the little end of this intro is just the putting the loop together and the benchmark portion of the screen. Now, if you want to see the whole build come together, make sure you check out the full AIO build right here, which we're using all of the same parts that we used for the water cooling build, but then we ripped out all the cooling and then put in the EK water block. Okay, so think of this as like a sequel, like a part 2, where we're essentially taking the same build, cranking it up to 11 in the cooling department, and then unleashing the beast. Which, by the way, if you want to see more builds like this, then go ahead and slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss videos like this one and more. Remember, the more of you that are watching our content, the cooler our content becomes, literally cooler. Now, let's go on to the build. Welcome to the final part of this 14900KS series that we were doing in partnership with Intel and Newegg. The other thing too, let's talk about this real quick. Here are the parts we're putting inside of the PC that is here today. So we're using an Intel Core i9-14900KS. We're using an MSI MPG Z790 Carbon Wi-Fi motherboard. For the GPU, we use the NVIDIA RTX 4080 Founders Edition. We have 3 terabytes of Kingston Fury, Kingston Renegade NVMe storage. So this is Gen 4 storage with close to 7,000 megabits read-write. You have a 32 gigs of 6,000 mega transfer Kingston Fury RAM. You have a Lee & o11 Evo RGB black that was customized by the team over at Blue Horse Studios, which is this beautiful dragon. It matches the MSI dragon. It's Year of the Dragon, so there's a bunch of kind of cool stuff that goes with it. This is all custom water cooled, direct die custom water cooled from the team over at EK Waterblocks. And then we're using an MSI MPG A1000G PSU. So that means that you do have room on top of that 4080 and of course the 14900KS to do any overclocking, which you guys will see by temperatures is very, very possible when you're going to get the temps that we're going to get on a direct die. So just giving you guys a tour of the build. This build probably takes closer, I think for the most part, just given all the modifications we had to do to the case and some other things, you're looking at 12 to 14 hours of work to essentially pull something like this off. How we're basically doing our loop is we have distro plate from EK Waterblocks. This is the Lee & Lee Evo distro plate. This was not specifically made for the Evo RGB. The main reason I love to do distro plates is, again, you get a lot of those even tube lines across here. And then of course, then we have their regular fittings. They're all in their satin black. Our radiators and our Fantex fans, what you're seeing here is that we're using Fantex D30 fans. And then we have super, super thick radiators. So again, we're talking about crazy, like over 30 millimeters thick in terms of our radiators. Plus we have the 30 millimeter thick D30s that are on top of that. We have our water blocked, RTX 4080, which is done in their EK water block, and then this is the direct die water block itself. So again, underneath this, it has a custom plate, and then there's actually the actual direct die itself that goes onto that, and then so we've direct die water cooled that. Then we have another basically big radiator, 30 millimeter radiator. We have more Fantex D30s. Now the thing that's super interesting for how we did airflow in this, is we have exhaust, and then we're gonna actually use intake. So these are reverse fans, and then we're using this as the primary intake for fans. Now this is gonna pull air from other places, but for the most part, this is the primary fan feeding the loop itself. So we are pulling in air directly from that. The main reason being is that you don't do intake or anything like that from anywhere else in the case, is that again, because you want specifically because we're cooling a 14900KS, we definitely want to make sure that we're getting the high static pressure from these fans. So that's why we're specifically, so this is actually an intake fan, not an exhaust fan in this particular case. And then you'll see in the temps that we're going to be absolutely fine from there in terms of where it is. Loop wise, what we basically have is the way that it's essentially is it's going to go up, out through the CPU, back into the distro plate, out to the GPU, down through the radiator, up into the second radiator, out, back, and then through essentially the actual CPU block itself. So that is the full loop that we basically have planned today. Now, a couple things we did have to do, because this was not something where we couldn't do some case modification, is you'll actually see here, again, just to give you a closer look to the build itself, again, just to run through the loop one more time. We're gonna start here, and then from here, so this is the beginning of our loop, it's gonna go in, and then out of our CPU, down in, then it'll then come out, go to our GPU, then out of our GPU, and then in, and then from there, it basically will go out and then to our radiator, which will go up, and then, basically through the distro plate, up, and then through our other radiator, and then it basically then continues its route through the CPU. So that's the actual plan for the actual routing itself. So first thing we're gonna work on, guys, is we're gonna start our CPU loop. So from the front, there we go. There's two loops now. We have our GPU loop and our CPU loop both in. So now we're gonna go and we got two more left. Okay, so here we go, guys. We're gonna start filling here. This is a very, very thirsty loop, just so you know. It's gonna take a little while to get it filled. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna turn this on, put this right here. So, the last thing we want to do, just to give you the final look of the build, And there we go. That is how the final build looks, all lit up and everything. You're looking at 62 under load right now, pulling a 37,000 on Cinebench. So, understanding, saying how much of it the water, how much is the D-lid. So when we did it, remember guys, we have a 14900KS that we water cooled with a team over at TechTuber, and it was at 83. So you have 20 degrees difference between custom water cooling and basically delidding. That's how much. It was a 20-degree difference on basically the direct die cooling. So that's what you're basically getting here. So again, guys, we're up to 65, 64. What are we gonna do?
The only answer is let the motherboard run rampant.
Okay, so we're gonna let the motherboard run rampant now, this shows you why you don't let motherboards run rampant, but we're gonna do it anyway. So let's let it just do stock settings. And there, see, it already hit, but look at what the wattage is here. It's pulling 400, 500 watts, right? Like, so it's hitting that temp right away with the amount of wattage we're putting through this. Now, the thermal throttle, so it's not actually thermal throttling, guys. It is boost throttling, and you'll see that here in a second, because look at the clocks, and then look at our Cinebench score, 42,340. So, yeah. So there it is, 42,000 on our 14900KS though. And then again, if it doesn't go down, then what we're doing is we're looking at boost throttling, not thermal throttling. So again, if you watch it, this is important to know. So again, this is where tweaking, because again, I could do 42,000 and still have this in the 70s, but you would just have to do some undervolting to make it happen. So we'll do some other benchmarks and stuff like that too. It's funny because Face Game FPS says it's your DD block, but so we've done this with a normal block too, and we get the same exact thing. It's running at 82. So, and the only two is I've done it with any other block, and even under Intel stock settings, it running in the 60s that's ridiculous. So 171 to 250, guys. Okay, so now here we are, 175 frames per second. This is with sharpness. So again, we're hitting 42 on the CPU. 42 on the GPU, which is crazy given we're pulling almost 200 watts through the GPU right now. And it's sitting at a nice and frosty 42. And then we're sitting at 61 on our CPU. And 60 frames per second. This game is I am pushing, it's pulling 254 watts. But I mean, dude, look at how absolutely clean this looks. Wow, this looks actually really good. But still, man, 48 on our GPU and 59 on our CPU. And that's a KS. Pulling 100, yeah, still very chilly temps. That was a lot to pack into a 2.5-hour stream, but the best part is we have an amazing build and a great starting point to really tinker with and dial in what you can do with the build and unlock the full potential of the 14900KS. As you can see when we did our benchmarking, that if you leave things to just the motherboard manufacturers, that they either end up with like way over wattage or way under wattage. So ideally, if you were gonna build a build just like this, spending time and tweaking it yourself will be the real way to dial in and build and make it do so much more. So the question is, what do you think? And would you like to see a video where we take this, tinker with it, tweak it, overclock it, and just get it to the best possible settings? And what, if anything, would you actually change about this build? And are you brave enough to actually delid and direct die cool? I'd love to know all that and more down in the comments below. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so that you don't miss videos like this one right here on Robeytech. And if you want to continue the conversation, maybe you're thinking about doing this build, maybe you want to plan something, head over to our Discord server at discord.gg/Robeytech. Amazing place to talk to other like-minded PC and tech enthusiasts who'd love to guide you through that process and maybe walk right along with you. And you know what? You might just make a friend. Also, make sure you follow me at Robeytech absolutely everywhere. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.